Well, good evening and happy Shabbat. Pleased to be with you. We're here with Kirk. JB may join us as we progress in our program. And I get confession, I'm not actually here alone. I have Asher with me. Asher's looking at me now. I'm old enough now to know my name, but for those who don't know, Asher is my 4-month-old Labrador retriever, and she is now making a major contribution to translating, to commentary, and to showtime as she's chewing on a bone, looking up at me at my feet. How are you, Kirk?
I'm really good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
You know, we talked a little bit before the show, and I'd kind of like to move back in time a little bit and pick up again because there's so much to this one statement. It's in Yahowah 17:12. It's an announcement of all-out war against Israel. And each word in it leads us to just interesting insights. It's one of those, I look at it as a treasure chest that you could write page after page just on each individual term that is in this statement. And I find that fascinating. It's just the opportunity to learn. And now, in all fairness, this is not an uplifting chapter. This is a tough one. This is all-out war against Israel, and for that reason, it's tough. But it's like I'm right now translating. I've actually finished translating it, but I'm trying to write my commentary on it now, and it's the last verse of Yahowah 18 in the next chapter, and it's really tough. It's in fact it's written in a way that I just want to do everything I could not to translate it the way it's written. You ever come up, Kirk, when you start translating something and you just don't want to go where the words lead?
A little bit, yeah. I can.
Yeah, well, this is one of them. There are things that I wish were written differently. I wish they were clearer. I wish not so much clearer. I wish they were easier for people to find and affirm. It's all there. It just takes a lot of work to find it and to affirm it. It's wonderful. There's no work that's more enjoyable, and I'm glad that it's hard personally because it makes it more fun, and you feel more excited when you find an insight here and there. But sometimes, I wish there were key aspects of Yahweh's plan that were a little more straightforward in terms of the way they're presented. And I realize God can't do that because then people would just do what it says and wouldn't learn anything. They wouldn't come to know Him in the process. They wouldn't think it through. There'd be no spirit of discovery, and it wouldn't serve as a filter to weed out those that really don't belong in eternity. But this is one that, gosh, I didn't want it to go there. And what it's speaking of is it's condemned America. I told you that I found 64 adjectives that describe America. First time through, I think I found 12, but there's 64. And the last statement goes right back to this country. It talks about all these attributes that depict America and only America. And it actually says that whether it's it or he, I guess it could be both, are going to be brought to Yahowah as tribute, as a gift. And I didn't want to write it that way. This idea that my country, that's despicable for sure, but is being brought to God as tribute to, because He's going to destroy whatever is left of it. He's going to destroy, and the leaders of it are all going to be judged, condemned. I don't have too much of a problem with that, but it's still tough to read.
Sure it is.
And I wanted to translate it in a different way, and what I found is that there's a brace of words in it that are only used 3 other times in the totality of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, and one of those happens to be in a Mizmor, in a psalm. It's a psalm that defines the word, and it talks about how Yahweh intervened to save Israel from those who wanted to destroy it, and that it actually explains fear. And what it says is that those that have waged war against Israel, who've sought to destroy his people and his land, they're going to learn what it means to fear him. And it's what we've always thought, that fear, Yahweh was written, fear and revere, for a reason.
Yes.
That if you don't revere him and respect him enough that you learn what he has to say and accept his generous offer, and you're on the other side actually encouraging people to do things that lead others away from him, then you're going to be judged by him, and it isn't going to be pretty. If you're judged by him, there's only bad outcomes.
Yes.
And it says that the world at large is going to learn to fear him. And it speaks of judgment, of the leaders of that militia and military that came against Israel being judged, in the whole world dealing with a time of judgment. And this particular passage at the end of Yahshua 18 is the judgment of America. And it's being brought to Yahowah that way. And because it was defined so clearly in the Mizmor, the only way, you've got to go where the words lead.
Yes, sir.
And we will get to that in due time. But what I want to strongly emphasize is that while there probably aren't today, it wasn't all that long ago that we had a fairly significant number of listeners who would be considered Trumpites now. They would be part of the MAGA, Make America Great Again mythology. They were very much into the conspiracies that swirl around the fake news types that embrace Trump. And they still have a lot of patriotism. I'm going to tell you, you don't want to be a patriotic American. Because you're going to be judged by God. And guess what? Those being judged by God, they're going to Sheol.
Yes. That's very clear.
And, I was thinking about it, and I'm sure that between now and the time we present this passage, we'll grapple more with it. Remember the time when I spent 2 shows saying, that Israel is going to be turned over to feminine influences, and what that could mean, what it means, what has happened, how we analyze that. And sometimes you just say, I didn't write these words, I'm just trying to make sense of them. That's a passage I didn't write. I'm just trying to make sense of it, and it's so some of it's painful. But the better, the key I have found, Kirk, to translating, and there's a lot of them. We talked about that before the show began. Is why do Christian religious groups so butcher these translations? Go with an errant meaning and forget all the accurate meanings. Just leave 90% of the message without conveying it. And what I found is it's not just that context reveals how you translate the words, because I can't say almost, a very substantial number of Hebrew words have a dark and light side. And so the context tells you, do I reveal the dark side or the light side?
Yes.
But it's far more than that. There's a lot of words, and particularly when you're dealing with Yahshua, where the vocabulary it's a notch above where it is every place else. And you've got to be willing to take the words that particularly aren't used regularly and take the time to see all the different places they are used, particularly their first use, and make certain that your rendering of it is consistent with that, and not consistent with some scholar says this word means such and such.
Right. That's very helpful, though. I mean, I've been doing that for some time now. So,
like in Yoshiga 18, we're confronted with the neck again. Just as Yahweh is calling His people out of America, because there's 7 million Jews in America, Yehudim, Israelites, and as He's calling His people out of America, that the tool that He uses to call them out is the neck. That's fine. Which, I hope that Yah finds a better source to raise up than what we have done. But at this point, it's not looking promising in that regard. And so, humbly, we've got to recognize that maybe this is our mission. And
this is the role.
And so, in this particular chapter, the next thing I'm doing is every mention of neck. There's 22 of them. Yeah. Gonna track down and share.
Let me take a little issue with it, only in the sense that when I know you would like it to be someone Yehudim, however, what you've done, everything about what you've done and what we've all tried to also do is to expose what Yehudim have already said under inspiration by Yah or directly from quoting from Him. So when
that's the conclusion I came to, and that's I think there's two things that struck me this week as I dealing with the neck again in Yasha 18. Every time I come up with it, I just take this deep breath and say, God, that's way more responsibility than I'm comfortable with, and surely you can find somebody better. And the two things that keep on striking me is one of the themes of Yashayah is that Yahweh's people have become so religious, so political, so estranged, that when Yashayah himself was brought into Yah's home in heaven, and the door was open and there was no one there, not one person there, and you realize, well, there's a reason it's not a Yehudim.
They just won't participate.
There's no one there. And then the other theme is that God is constantly saying, I looked for someone, and I couldn't find anyone.
Yes.
And so, it's not by merit, but by default that we're here. And the point that you made is the other one that I constantly come to, which is if this were, and it's not, a new prophetic revelation, if God were adding to the treasure trove of insights and providing new revelation, then we would have to be Yehudim. Absolutely, unequivocally, no question about it. But that's never been our mission. We've never made that claim, never been our mission. It is not who we are. These books were absolutely in no way, shape, or form compiled based upon direct and private revelation from Yahweh. I'm reading Yashayah, and the prophet Yashayah in the 18th chapter says, "This is what Yahweh said to me."
Yes.
Okay, that requires a Yehudim. But it does not require a Yehudim to say, this is what Yahweh inspired Dod, or Yashayah, or Yirmiyah, or Moshe to write.
Right.
And this is what those words actually mean. And these are insights that can be derived from those words. Things that are worth your consideration. Help you understand, build a foundation. So all of that is simply observing what Yahweh has conveyed and then contemplating the implications of it and being willing to share it. The last thing, Kirk, that came to me as I was struggling with the neck again, is that there is a profound truth that I know has diminished our numbers somewhat because it's very, very controversial, and that is that the branch is Dowd. Mm-hmm. That Dowd's the single most important person in human history. Yeah. That Dowd is our source of guidance. Yeah. Yeah, it's based upon what he conveyed in the Mizmor. He is the perfect explanation of what the Torah represents, how we benefit from it, how the covenant that was shared through Abraham can be embraced and capitalized upon. And the thing that struck me is that Yehudim, even in the last days, have been so conditioned to mock Jesus Christ, as they well should. Nobody named Jesus Christ was a Jew. No. And this whole concept of Messiah is so ridiculously presented. There's no place where Yosha is anointed.
Correct.
But to recognize that he is just a branch, and a branch off of, remember, as a shoot of Jesse? Mm-hmm. It's a branch off of Dowd.
Oh, yes.
And that what Yahweh is calling Yisrael and Yehudah to isn't a recognition of Yosha, but a recognition of who he is through the very heart and soul of what it means to be a Yisraelite, through Dowd. That's why it's the kingdom of Dowd that's being reestablished and celebrated for all eternity. Yeah. And just think about how much more comfortable that is for a Yisraelite. They get to embrace their own.
Yes.
The most Yahud of all Yahud.
Yeah.
Their king. The writer of their Psalms.
Yeah.
And it was just so wonderful because I read an article that was shared with me that I took 4 days to read it. It wasn't that long. It was an excerpt of a book written in 1999. I should have read it a long time ago. I didn't. It was called Hitler's Pope. And it was about the life of the man that was Pope during Hitler's rise, but mostly about who he was and what he did before Hitler rose to power, and how disgustingly anti-Semitic he was, how much he hated Jews, and still was promoting this myth as a Catholic scholar before he became Pope, that Jews killed Jesus.
Killed Jesus.
And that Jews have suffered under this Catholic rubbish for the better part of 2,000 years. And to ask them to embrace Jesus Christ when they've been condemned by the most popular religion in the history of the world of killing him is something that's not reasonable. Mm-hmm. No, and let me state for once more time. And this was, a man who reestablished the infallibility of Catholic popes. There was no Jesus. There was no Christ. His name is Yahusha. Come from a place called Nazareth. He was Nazar, the branch. He was crucified by the Romans, and it was Imperial Rome that became Roman Catholicism. If you want to know who killed him, look in a mirror, Catholics. But before you do, why don't you think for a moment as to how stupid it is to believe that man could kill God. And then think about why he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Citing the opening lines of Psalm 22, before his body succumbed to the crucifixion. Meaning, it most certainly wasn't God that died, because God can't die. Think it through. And then, for all you Roman Catholics that believe your Pope is infallible, when the Pope wrote how disgusting Jews were and how he aided and abetted the Holocaust, you really ought to be very, very careful in your recognition that Yosha was a Jew. Shimon Kepesh, your Saint Peter, was a Jew. Yahuchanan, your Saint John, was a Jew. Even your goddamn Paul was a Jew. Everyone that wrote each of the prophetic books and the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, they had one thing in common. They were all Jews. God has but one chosen people. They're Jews. Ought to think it through, folks. Now, that's my rant, but I am going to say I don't know quite what I'm going to do with it yet. But we need to deal with Hitler's Pope. And the absolute and unequivocal proof that without the Catholic Church at the highest levels, Adolf Hitler would not have risen to power, would not have been able to maintain power, and most certainly would not have been able to perpetrate the Holocaust. And that's something that I must admit that I was wrong on. I thought that the Catholic Church played a very, very minor role. And that's just not true. Let's return now to Yeshaya 17:12. This is a introduction to the impending peril of what is in Ezekiel called the Magog War. It is not a world war at this point. It will evolve into one. But at this point, it is an all-Islamic war against Israel, beginning in what is likely the spring of 2027. A tidal wave of Islamic terrorists will attack Israel in a manner that is worse than the combined conquests of the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, and the Romans. It's going to be more pervasive and vicious than the Holocaust. With these words, we are witnessing the prologue to World War. 2019 as we speak, isn't it? Mm-hmm. March.
Yes, sir.
March the 8th, 2019 on the Roman pagan calendar. 2027. Isn't that far away, is it?
No, sir.
Woe, be wary, oi, the preponderance of people of a great many nations. Rabim, amem, both plural. Rab means a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's written in the plural here. A lot.
A lot, yeah.
And amim is also in the plural. A preponderance of people of a great many nations. This is no small assault. This isn't Egypt and Syria and a couple of other Islamic countries decide to seek fame and fortune by destroying Israel. This is the totality of the Islamic world.
Yes.
They're going to roar in as agitated hordes and confused terrorists. Vast multitudes. They're bewildered. They're loud-mouthed. They're flaunting their abundant wealth, clamoring emotionally with their worldly possessions. Boisterous. Congregating with their troops. Noisy. Emotional.
Armed to the teeth, yeah.
It's exactly how you see Muslims throughout the Middle East waging war. Similar to loudly groaning, stormy, and enraged seas.
Yeah.
You know, there are two reasons that Yahweh uses metaphors. The terrorists are not water.
No.
You know, they're not waves, but there'll be waves of them, and they will flood into Israel. They're not salt water, but yet they represent the sea.
Yes.
You know, if it was Eretz, it's the land that represents Israel. The sea represents Gentiles. And so there is that reason, and there's also the reason of water can be the source of life. It's beautiful. The source of cleansing, the source of life. But also water can be unbelievably destructive.
Sure.
You know, I once had a home in Montecito. Much of Montecito was destroyed by 2 inches of rain. And when we have one of these hurricanes, and you know, I live in Florida now, have a hurricane, it's not so much the winds that destroy things, it's this tidal surge. And the tsunamis that come out of earthquakes are far more destructive than the earthquake itself.
Mm-hmm.
So water can be not only incredibly destructive and deadly, it's unstoppable. I mean, look what happened in Japan after that earthquake.
Yeah, so
the earthquake, rattled some shells, threw some things off the shelves onto the floor, put some cracks in the wall. The tsunami, buried several cities.
Tsunami wiped out the town with
right.
everything that was in the tsunami. You forget what's
right.
in the water with it. Yeah.
So all of that is conveyed by groaning, stormy, and enraged seas. They will choose to be constantly infuriated and uproarious, constantly snarling and angry, electing to be driven by the winds of religious, political, and social desire. Yeah. Hama. That really today only defines one group of people. There have been times in the Crusades where both sides could be defined that way. And, there are really haven't been that many peoples where the combatants are uproarious, where the combatants are snarling and angry. Most of the part, if you look at the GIs in World War II, they're not snarling and angry. They're scared spitless.
Yes.
They're not yelling and shouting. They're trying to remain quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a target of a grenade or a rocket or sniper.
Yeah.
But it's not true with Muslims.
No, the only thing of modern times is and they weren't snarling. The only thing comparable would be something like North Korea during the war when they came over so few troops that we had, but they weren't snarling and everything. In fact, they were told, if you don't go down, we're going to shoot you. So
it's like the Russians in Stalingrad going against the Germans. That they had too few guns. They just put massive numbers of people against machine guns, and thousands upon thousands were gunned down. They were either shot in the front by the Germans or shot in the back by the Russians. But they're not snarling. Islamic terrorists are unique in this regard.
Yeah, they want to be there.
They want to be there. They're boisterous. They're infuriated. They're uproarious. They're snarling. They're angry. And they're driven by the winds of religious, political, and social desire. And so he's talking about Muslims here. And in this particular case, it's the call imperfect paragogic nun active jussive. Now, that's a mouthful. But what it means is that actually and literally, in a habitual and continuous fashion, and only Muslims have done this habitually and continuously, with ongoing consequences reflecting their desire to do the will of the one directing them. In other words, they're choosing to do the will of their God, Allah. And then the corrupting roar of the destructive societal chaos. Sha'on. One of the most powerful words that I've encountered along these translations. It's the loud mocking cry of things as they crash down in ruins around the huge and presumptuous crowds of rebellious, confused, political and religious, brawling militant terrorists, panicked into fighting while wallowing in their depressed slime pit amidst the wasteful desolation associated with Sha'ul and Sheol.
Spelled identically.
Yes.
Yep.
Of the people of these nations who are transformed while massing under a single religious and political leader, Leom. And we're going to spend considerable time on Leom, and we're going to learn some amazing things as we trace down the meaning of Leom. That Leom was one of those examples, Kirk, where I just couldn't translate it, people. Because there are so many Hebrew words for individuals, for man, for people, for nations, so many. Why in the world are we seeing Leom here? And it's not used very often. What is it that makes this word unique? And one of the things that you find is it represents people of nations who are undergoing some transformational event. They're changed in some way. And they mass together under a single religious or political leader. Now, that's kind of what we came to expect in terms of the Toraless one uniting the world, isn't it?
But this is.
But it could also be Muslims finally united around their Mahdi.
Yes.
Which they have this prophetic desire to find this one leader, and it's all out of Muhammad plagiarizing and bastardizing the Talmud, because in the Talmud there is the story of Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and how Gog is going to lead the Magog Federation. And so since rabbis read this to Muhammad, he twisted it around, and now he thinks that, and Muslims think that that's going to be their guy that's going to lead them in a united front against Israel. That's what this is talking about, that these people are going to be united under a single religious leader. And that's so different from Muslims. We saw in Syria that the Shiites had different affinities, and the Sunnis had so many different affinities it was almost impossible to keep them straight.
As did the Kurds. Yeah.
There was the Kurds. There were the freedom fighters. There were the Syrian whatever it was that America backed. Then there was those associated with Al-Qaeda, and then those associated with al-Nusra, and then those associated with the Islamic State. And they were all fighting each other. It wasn't just that they fought the Shia; they all fought with one another. So it is extraordinarily unique to read Leom here, that they're going to be united in their attack of Israel. That hasn't happened in a very, very, very long time. Saladin may have done it for a moment or two, and it may have been done briefly after the transfer of power from the Mecca area and Yathrib, today's Medina, to Damascus. So Leom.
Yeah,
under a single religious and political leader. And they're going to be like the horrible and destructive, desolating uproar, Sha'om again, of the flood.
Mm-hmm.
Forcefully and in great numbers, Kabar. Capitulating to the will of another, they will continually strive to destroy, moving rapidly while creating an uproar. Sha'ah. Kabar means in abundance and seeking fame and fortune. That's again, these are Islamic terrorists. This is what they do. They, fame and fortune by earning bonus points for
killing and stealing. Yes.
Yeah, killing a Jew.
Yes.
Wickedly and intensely intertwined, thought to be extraordinarily powerful and fortunate, with grating passion. They always want to ruin everything. This is Sha'ah. They touch. Muslims don't make things better, they make them worse, devastating themselves in the process, leaving lifelessness in their wake, while blaring as they rush along, such that it is prudent to pay very close attention to them and what they're doing during this brief moment in time. Again, they niffle, imperfect, pedagogic. Habitually, these jihadists are destroyed as they lay waste, acquiescing to the will of the one driving them. Well, that's 1712, Kirk, but, the first word was oi.
Oi.
This is a warning. You don't want to be part of this. You want out before this happens. Rabim is the second. Tells us this is not going to be an isolated terrorist attack like 19 Muslims perpetrated 9/11. This isn't going to be 19 or 190 or 1900. Not going to be 19,000 or 190,000. It's not going to be 1.9 million, not even 19 million. But it could be 119 million.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to jump ahead, but a little bit later on, you went to Yirmiyah, and he itemizes it. I just got through that today, or I believe it was Yirmiyah. And he itemizes all these people, and I looked up every one of them, and they traced their roots, and you name it, everything. And they're all, but there's also a little indication that there's also European or Americans in there as well, and religious Christian.
Yeah, because
it looks like to me.
It is Moab, and Moab is the denunciations of Moab are all just dead on for Shaul and Pauline Christianity.
Yes.
And since there is no Moab in the last days, and Moab hadn't been around for 2,000 years or more.
No.
So he's not talking about the ancient kingdom of Moab. So it's what does Moab represent today? And I want to tell you the most adroit depiction of Moab is Pauline Christianity.
Yeah.
And in fact, I even had to rename the chapter. It's the place that the Torah's voice died.
Torah died. Yeah, voice died.
Yeah.
But he tells you,
because 18 is an express condemnation of America. It's hard not to see America's fingerprints on. Now, America's weapons will be those wielded. My guess is that 90+% of the weapons that are going to be brought to bear against Israel that'll be killing Jews will be American weapons. And today, weapons, Kirk, are quite different than they were 100 years ago. 100 years ago, a nation could sell its rifle or its machine gun and say, go have fun. Well, today the weapons are so complicated that without an ongoing support from America, not only in training but in service and in maintenance and in all the technology that continues to drive them, whether it be the GPS system, the guidance systems, or just the technology behind them. They have to have the express approval of America to wage any war. Saudi Arabia's warplanes aren't going to work without American permission. Just
well, don't they have to feed them the information during the battle when they have to do that?
Yeah, America's not giving them all the technology. So America has to be complicit.
Yes.
And they have to have advisors there, at the very least. Because I'm here to tell you that this is all-out war against Israel, and there's only one nation that's blamed for it. America.
Yeah.
It's not blaming Syria. Syria's destroyed.
Yeah.
Now, he will, in subsequent chapters, call out Egypt and other nations.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always a silver lining even in those. There's no silver lining in America. It ends really, really rough. So this is Rabim. Many. They will be Hamon, agitated and angry, confused. They're going to be loudmouthed. They're going to be screaming, Allahu Akbar.
Mm-hmm.
Allah's a mouse. We will check into that in a moment. Hamon, by the way, is used in connection with Gog and Yaketz El, Ezekiel 39:11. Just another tie-in to the Magog War. So Kahama, they will be loud and destructive as a stormy and surging Yamin, sea of Gentiles. Islam is the only faith which is consistently Hama, producing infuriated, snarling, and angry religious devotees habitually doing the will of the one directing them. Confused, enraged, driven by the winds of their religion. This is one of those rare times that I'm aware in which a statement conveys first and third person volition. Now, this was the paragogic non-Jusive. We talked about that before. Now, Islam means to do the will of Allah, to have surrendered one's will to Allah.
Yes.
Well, of course, Muslims don't know that Allah is Satan. But Christians don't know that their Lord Jesus Christ is also Satan. What follows is the most disturbing. The Leon population of these nations, this politically and religiously organized massing of people under a unified government or religious leader, which is somehow transformed, will be as Sheol. They're going to be as Sheol. This is as clear as words allow for God telling us that phrase that we say so often about like hell on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is Sheol on earth. That's what we're witnessing here. Now, Sheol conveys a lot. It speaks of corrupting and confusing, which is the nature of religion. That's what Babel is all about, to corrupt and to confuse.
Yes.
It addresses the horrible propensity to rob souls of their life. Religious again. It exposes the rebellious nature of Shaul, the father of the Christian religion. And it depicts these militants stuck in the pit of Sheol. It even describes the lightless prison as a black hole, a dark and massive depression which traps every object entering it. Further, the on suffix following Shah suggests a binding association with Shaul and with Sheol, with religion and politics, with destruction and death, with confusing corruption. Ultimately, it is religious, and religion is the opposite of what it claims to be. Rather than drawing believers to God, it pushes them all away. Now, I'd just be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that you know what Shamuel told Yahweh when the people came to him and said they want a leader like all the Gentile nations. And Shamuel said to Yahweh, I failed you. It was just like Yahshua showing up in heaven. He is Yahweh's most prolific prophet, speaking to his people, trying to draw his people's attention so they return to Yahweh. And he shows up in heaven, and he's been so successful, there isn't a single person, not a single person, waiting at the door. And of course, Yahshua says, "Oh my God, I'm an absolute, abject, and total failure."
Yeah.
And that's what Shamuel thought.
Yeah.
You know, here he's supposed to be speaking for and leading Yahweh's children, and they say, "No, we want a king like all the Gentile nations." And Yahweh said, "No, they're not rejecting you, Shamuel. They're rejecting me." You know, it's just the antithesis of what Paul wrote when in Romans 13 he spoke of submitting to governments, and that God established governments, and the governments are good. God says, no, the government is an absolute rejection of him.
Yeah.
There is no God bless America.
No.
As a result of choosing to believe men rather than God, political and religious man has been Sheol, confused and corrupted. He's become Sheol, horribly destructive, desolating, deadly. Civilized man is a warlike brawler. And wanting to shed, and this is important, the Hasatan title, this wayward Malak turned to religion, where he achieved his goal through intermingling truth and lies, through counterfeit and confusion. The adversary was not only able to convince humankind that the old God's words were antiquated and that they were for another time, another people, another place, and that they needed to be updated and replaced and thus rejected and ignored. He positioned himself as the Lord God of these religions. In Judaism, men's words take precedence over God's words. The focus of Christianity is a dead God on a stick. In Islam, Allah is Satan. So at this moment of Sheol on earth, we are witnessing Satan's magnus opus in these words. He is waging war against the Creator and the creation. That's why I wanted to go back over this. Few things are as important. And this is really just scratching the surface. You know, over the past 15 years as I've studied Yah's words, I've come to realize that the fiery and torturous nature of the Christian and Islamic hell was irrational. Sheol is a place for souls and thus energy and not physical bodies, rendering the notions of fire and torture absurd. Further, with Yahweh describing himself as light, eternal separation from him had to be in total darkness.
Yes.
And serve as a means to eternally trap even energy from escaping. These realizations led me to conclude that Sheol was akin to a black hole. Yeah. But this was simply an extrapolation reasoned from the evidence. Well, that was until we dealt with Sheol. Because Sheol describes the lightless prison of Sheol as a black hole, as a dark and massive depression which traps every object entering it, which is both destructive and desolating. Now, it was only 50 years ago, Kirk, that the concept of a black hole became widely known.
Yes, I remember.
And we discovered that it was, in fact, a massive depression in space-time from which nothing escapes. albeit hot, it radiates heat. We have come to realize that black holes are the most destructive and desolating phenomenon in the universe. And yet here in a text that's 2,700 years old, black holes are being depicted in conjunction with mankind's most destructive, deadly, and damning behavior.
Yeah.
That's an aha moment.
Pretty positive stuff, isn't it? I mean, about what Yahweh. Truth to this.
Yes, that's a nugget that is only going to excite the observant.
Yeah,
you got to work hard to find it.
Yeah, it works for me.
For the observant that kind of wants to understand the big picture and how all the little details fit together, and understand what God is offering and what He is rejecting, what He's accepting, what He's promising. These little details make a big difference. So I remember I was left wondering as I went through this what was the most thrilling part of this statement? Was it finding the cause and consequence of rebelling against Yahweh through religious and political schemes by way of patriotism and militarism? Because that was certainly presented. Might the most titillating facet be the correlation between the two Shauls, the political one and the religious one, with their juxtaposition into this story revealing why man is now at war with God? Or is it the scientific depiction of a black hole, thereby providing yet another reason to acknowledge that Yahshua was inspired to write these words by Yahweh? Or could it be a celebration of the God-given human capacity to reason, to find precious nuggets and then connect them in a way that causes us to understand? And after all, Shalom serves to affirm that our reasoning had indeed been right. It's a tribute to Yah for providing these clues along with giving us the ability to find them, to understand them, and then to answer our questions. But that's really not it. There's the last word in that statement was another doozy. Those kabir, seeking fame and fortune, who are wickedly intertwined with their religion, will leave a wake of destruction and complete desolation. Kabir itself offers some remarkable insights. Kabar is where the phrase Allahu Akbar, the Islamic prayer of fear, and Satan's ultimate ambition was revealed. After failing on his first attempt to subjugate Mecca, Muhammad and his booty-driven Muslim militants laid siege on the Jewish farming community of Kabar. With weapons of war pitted against farming equipment, spades and hoes, Muhammad felt like taunting his soon-to-be victims, the Jews, telling them that his God, Allah, was greater than their God, Yahweh. And then the Muslims murdered the men, they raped the women, and they enslaved the children of Kabar, looting and pillaging what remained. Turning the clock forward 1,400 years, this predominantly Islamic assault on Yisrael will be the ultimate expression of that day, of Kabar. This time, Kabar, those wickedly seeking fame and fortune, will act far more forcefully. They will come in far greater numbers, and they will brawl with far better weapons. And they will manifest a far more perverted passion. Now, speaking of perverted, recognizing that Arabic is a direct derivative of Hebrew and borrows from the same alphabet, I did some digging around to find the original intent of Akbar. And Allahu Akbar, Akbar is a mouse. It's a rat. Look it up. It's Strong's 5909. And that is to say that Allah is the mouse who roared.
Mm-hmm.
The Islamic God is a dirty little critter prone to spread disease, and a real rat when this vein, due to their diet, proclivity to live in the shadows of humans, and attract fleas, rats and mice have indirectly plagued and killed more humans than all other animals combined. Now including Allah's Islam, it expands Yahweh's depiction of the plague of death beyond Pauline Christianity. Now, if you want to search to validate this on your own, it's just as I put out the challenge. Go and see if you can find evidence that Nazareth existed before Constantine's mommy came in and named an existing village in Nazareth. Yeah, you'll find on that spot, you got history that goes back into the Bronze Age. It's just that the place wasn't named Nazareth.
No.
And that there's no record of a place being named Nazareth, not by Josephus, not by in the Amarna letters, not among any of Israel's trading partners, not in any of the testimony in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. It must have, 1,000 different names of places. No, it just meant that he was the Nazir, he was the branch. And I encourage you to go out and do your homework, because the conclusions are profound, and I would say the same thing here. Go out and validate this on your own.
Yes.
And do not be led astray by the first thing that you read, because just as in Nazareth, there's 100 Christian sites that says, we don't know, that's the people that make that claim are not true. This was a continuous community that goes back to the Bronze Age. Well, that's only partially true. There was a community there that went back to the Bronze Age, but it wasn't continuous. It was uninhabited for hundreds and hundreds of years. That wasn't the name of the community back then, and it wasn't named Nazareth in the first century. And the same thing is true. You'll find all sorts of Islamic apologists that are saying, no, it's just not true. It doesn't mean mouse. So if you want to search on your own, be careful. Because Islamic apologists errantly transliterate Akbar, A-K-B-A-R, as A-C-H-B-A-R. Mm-hmm. And then they claim, relying on the superfluous Masoretic diacritical markings from the 11th century, that it was pronounced differently, making the connection dubious. Fact is, the Hebrew word for mouse, A-K-B-A-R, is expelled identically in the original language as it is in the derivative tongue. Allahu Akbar means Allah is a mouse. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't expose. Go ahead, Kirk.
No, I just said I had no trouble whatsoever finding Akbar's mouse. I mean, I didn't read any commentary. I just looked through about 7 different lexicons, and they all said the same thing, and it came up with the same roots, and went from there to the spider and the spider web, and on and on and on. And it's just everything that I found in your commentary, commentary was very easy to find. And
by the way, we're going to go to Yeshaya 59, where the mouse is brought up, and it ain't good.
Yeah.
This really leads us to something that's meaningful. I just wanted to share what the most acclaimed Islamic apologist has to say about this particular thing. I just want to just show you how people deceive. Sure. On worldpress.com, under Yayas Now, we find, quote, there is a claim being branded about on the internet within Islamic-phobic circles. So you just love Islamic-phobic. The fact of the matter is, and this is really important, the people who hold Islam accountable are the least Islamic-phobic people on the planet. I think my Prophet of Doom book is the single best at presenting Muhammad's words and deeds accurately, comprehensively, chronologically, based solely on the 5 earliest Islamic sources. And I would be, therefore, the antithesis of Islamophobe. I've received 10,000 death threats. Do you think I would have written the book under my own name if I was afraid of Islam?
I would think you're smart.
That's one of the most stupid statements that somebody could possibly make is Islamophobic circles. Dictates, Allahu Akbar means Allah is a mouse in Hebrew. This is an obvious falsity based on ignorance and or deception. Allah Akbar means Allah is the greatest. A more literal translation is Allah is greater. And then I put in brackets, compared to whom? This wannabe scholar was unwilling or unable to acknowledge. The moment you make it a comparative, Allah is greater, then any sane person is going to say, wait a minute, if he's God and there's only one God, he can't be greater. And the fact in the context it was given, the very fact that it literally means Allah is greater, says that Allah is a liar, because he cannot have been the God who inspired the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, as the Quran claims, but in fact a God who wants to be greater than, seen as greater than Yahowah.
Yeah, but you're assuming people would be logical.
I'm assuming people could think.
I mean, he wrote the Quran when?
This person known to say, Akbar refers to greatest. In Hebrew, the word for mouse is akbar, A-C-H-B-A-R. That's not true. It is A-K-B-A-R.
Yes.
The Qaf is not the C-H. They are different letters.
Yes, they are.
It is as the Hebrew word for mouse, the Qaf, K, even says K, the second letter reading right, omits the dagesh, the dot in the middle of the letter. Therefore, the pronunciation of Akbar is not with a K, but with a CH sound. End quote. Liars lie. That's what religious deceivers do best.
But
beyond this, Akbar is derived from akbarish, the web of a spider. Both words emerge from the same root, one meaning to lure in, to entangle, and to trap prey. That is the purpose of religion in general and Islam in particular. Allah, who is actually Satan, has laid a trap for the unwary throughout the Quran, and Muhammad was played for a fool by the spirit that possessed him. What were you going to say, Kirk?
No, that's all right. I lost my thought there. I beg your pardon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, if you think of it, interrupt. Akbarish is found in Yada Yahweh 59.
Mm-hmm.
Same prophet, just towards the end of his book. I want to share it because I think we can learn something from it.
Yeah. The Torah, before we don't get the diacritical markings until we get the Leningrad Codex, right? I mean, that's
correct.
The 7th century. Okay. So, and this was, so they would have written down the Quran prior to that. And then if you go back to when the Torah is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, then we've got stuff that goes back 2,400 years. So no time would, and they were using just a different symbol for the same Hebrew letters. So to argue about the vowel points is ridiculous.
Of course.
So, I mean, some of this is just...
The same word spelled the same way. Akbar is mouse in Hebrew. And just like Quran is to read and recite in Arabic.
Torah. Yeah, the Torah
means to read and recite in Hebrew. It's the same word.
Yes.
Same letters, same word.
It's just one of those things that you want to argue with all this stuff that you've written, and it's very easy to. It's time consuming, but it's easy enough to discover where this comes from and what the arguments are and what the letters say and what the words say. And I don't understand. You couldn't debate this in a high school debate class. You truly couldn't.
Correct. But, there's a lot of people that just can't think. I got a letter from a listener to this program just a week ago that said I was dead wrong on chemtrails. And you're going, chemtrails happens to be one of the all-time dumbest conspiracy theories ever popularized. I mean, it's so obviously untrue and so ludicrous, and yet from somebody that listens to this program, that reads the books, and then they cite some video they wanted me to say, and you just go, oh, God damn, wake up. So people are easy to fool, and you got to work at it if you don't want to be fooled. So let's work at it here. Abayesh, which is the root of Akbar, is found in Yeshaya 59. Means spider web.
Right.
Your depraved perversions, Awon, have led to separation based upon a difference in understanding between you and your God. Wow. This is Awon, Kirk. This is the word that you've invested so much time understanding. And here I've just translated depraved perversions. If you were to synthesize Awon to something that could be translated, how would you translate it?
If I could only use one word, I would probably use twistedness or twisted, because that's what he did in the garden. Satan did in the garden. That's what religion does. It has to have a basis of truth to be twisted. Muhammad, without the Talmud readings, had nothing. Paul, without the Torah, had nothing. I mean, that's the first culprit, is just twisting it just like Satan did. And then after that, you get some, oh, God, gross injustice.
When I used perversion, to pervert is to twist.
Yes.
To pervert is the result of twisting. So let's render it your twisted perversions.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but that's the key.
Yes.
It's it's like so many words in Hebrew. If you get to the core and you understand it, then you're not going to render it iniquity. You're not going to render it sin. You're not going to take a word that doesn't convey anything that's useful. It is the propensity to twist the words of God and to pervert His message is the thing that really upsets God.
Oh, yeah.
And so Awon is a twisted perversion.
Yeah. And
so your twisted perversions have led you to separation based upon a difference in understanding between you and your God. Your offensive attitude and behavior, chata'ah, have hid His presence from you, such that He will not listen to you. For your hands are stained, they're defiled, they're polluted, with blood, and your fingers with dishonest exploitations. Fingers, that's what we write with, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It won't again.
Nope. Yes.
Your lips have spoken deceptive lies, knowingly promoting fraud. Secure. That's a bad one, because it's not saying, I've written a lot of things that were untrue. I'm rewriting Yeshaya 18:7 now for the third time because I got it wrong the first two times.
Mm-hmm. And you found more too. Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't a lie, it wasn't a deliberate misception, but I made a mistake. And it wasn't the only way that I was able to clarify the mistake is to search the word that was only used. It's hard, Kirk, to translate a word, and particularly a phrase, when the two words that comprise the phrase only appear two other times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my own kind of justification here. You're not working with much, but you can do it if you invest the time. And so, but that's a big difference, making making a mistake and then being willing to correct it is a huge difference than knowingly perpetrating a fraud. By knowingly perpetrating a fraud, Yahweh is telling Israel that what you've done here, and telling Christians that grew out of Pauline Jewish lies, that your Talmud, that your Christian New Testament, it's fraud. You know it's not true, and you promote it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's also saying that the fraud that's being promoted that causes them to have a different understanding than God is based upon these twisted perversions and dishonest exploitations. Your tongue has mused and muttered, meditated and imagined that which is perversely invalid and wickedly unjust. Awel. It's transliterated evil, but there's no V in Hebrew, so it's Ewel. No one calls out for that which is correct and right. Now, that is part of what left this opportunity for us.
Yes.
Here's Yahshua. This is the 59th chapter of Yahshua, and he's saying no one calls out for what is right. He's saying everybody, every one of you is promoting your twisted perversions. You're promoting your dishonest fraud. You're promoting your perverse and invalid mantra. It's your own mutterings and imaginations. Mm-hmm. And no one calls out for that which is correct and right. Nor does anyone exercise good judgment. There's nobody Sadak, there's nobody Shabbat. Regarding the truth and that which is steadfast and dependable. Emunah. What a statement. No one Kara calls out for that which is correct and right, Sadak, nor does anyone exercise good judgment, Shaphat, regarding the truth, that which is steadfast and dependable, Emunah. Well, it makes you want to cry, doesn't it?
It does.
Just my eyes just glaze over. It would tear up. It takes my breath away. Yeah. That you could have the smartest race in the history of human beings, given all of this profound, easily provable revelation from the creator of the universe, and all this favorable treatment from the creator of the universe, and not one single person calls out for that which is correct and right? Not one exercises good judgment regarding the truth?
So what is it in the character that they forget the Torah teaching? What is it that you could go from Hezekiah, let's say, or from Dode, and just forget what you've been taught, and then you just no longer want to retain it?
Man's overwhelming desire to play God, to seek power by claiming the divine right to do so. It's the nature of civilization, the nature of man. What's so interesting is they seek power by perverting Yah's testimony so that they are put in a position of authority. And yet, if you simply accept God's testimony, you're empowered beyond imagination.
Yes. Good.
They complacently trust, carelessly placing their confidence upon confounding and confusing myths out of the abyss, which are meaningless, wasteful, and vain. Tohu. So they complacently trust, carelessly placing their confidence, batak, upon confounding and confusing myths out of the abyss, which are meaningless and and ravaging deceptions and lifeless lies which negate all that is correct and useful. Shoah.
Shoah, yes.
Shoah is the unforgivable sin, delineated in the third statement that God etched in stone.
That's what I've got. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's also the name of the rabbinic system that was used to create the Masoretic text. The system of altering the sound of the letters through these diacritical markings.
So you can't
specifically to change the pronunciation of Yahweh's name.
God. If it wasn't so sick, it would be.
No, but it's profound, even though it's sad.
Yeah, it's just how you.
They conceive and contrive troublesome toil and mischievous labor. Boy, Amal, that's addressing the burdensome rules religious Jews are subject to in the Talmud. You know that we're now in the Shabbat. Do you know how many rules they have regarding the Shabbat?
Yes, I've read some of those things. And
you know how many that I observe from Yahweh regarding the Shabbat?
You just understand it.
Yeah. You know, there was a time where there was one that was important. You know, don't do your ordinary work on this day. Make it special.
Yeah.
I don't have any ordinary work anymore. Yeah, I just don't have any ordinary work anymore. And so it is special to me. That's why we're still doing this show as the sun sets on the Shabbat.
Yes, sir.
This is our way of making it special.
Yes, indeed.
You know, tomorrow I will do a lot of translating and commentary. It's inspired today to do that. But all of these, you can't turn on the light switch. You can't wash the dishes. You can't cook a meal. You know.
Two sets of dishes. Yeah.
God, that's not the purpose. The purpose is not what not to do. It's what to do.
Which is gather about with Yahweh.
And beget and bring forth a troubling propensity for devotion and religious idolatry.
Yes.
He won't. They conceive. Here we go. Now we're going to get to Abakish. They conceive and hatch, breaking open serpents, and thus Satan's eggs.
Yes.
And they weave, braiding the intrigue of the spider's web.
Yeah, we just covered that too.
Yeah. Stringing the threads. He who consumes and devours their eggs will perish and die, and the one who is trodden upon and crushed, which is prophetic of Roman Catholicism, is conceived and hatched by, breaks out among and cleaves to, and is broken down and torn apart by the toxic, debilitating, and deadly viper. Satan. And if I might share a snippet from the final chapter. For behold, Yahweh will come with fire, and with his chariot like a whirlwind, to turn back and to render his anger. And yes, his extreme disappointment, with righteous indignation, and rebukes with flames of fire. For by fire and by his cutting instrument, Yahweh will proceed to execute judgment with regard to all humanity. And the pierced and fatally wounded by Yahweh shall be a great many. Then those who set themselves apart as somehow sacred or holy, and think of themselves as clean and pure, even moral, with regard to going into the garden behind and after one individual in their midst who separates them, dividing things into two distinct parts, addressing the Christian New Testament, perhaps even the Quran, and certainly the Talmud. Devouring the swine's flesh, detestable things like vermin and idols, and the mouse, Akbar.
Isn't that interesting?
Muslims. shall be done away with and terminated, together as if they were one, prophetically states in advance of this occurring, Yahowah. So in their midst, who separates them, dividing them into two distinct parts, devouring the swine's flesh, Christians,
of course.
detestable things like vermin and idols, and the mouse, Muslims. Christians and Muslims shall be done away with and terminated, together as if they were one. Prophetically states in advance of this occurring, Yahowah. Those who devour the swine's flesh, the Christmas or the Easter ham, the Christmas ham.
Christmas ham too, yes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, smoked pork, everything pork you can imagine is the meat of Christendom. And Allah is the mouse who roared.
Yeah.
Those who devour the swine's flesh, the Christians, and the mouse, Muslims. Akbar. What do you think Yahweh thinks of Allahu Akbar? And he has, at the very last chapter of Yah, saying, all right, I'll Akbar you. Everyone associated with Akbar, you're going to be treated just like those who devour the swine's flesh. You're all going to die together at the same time. I want to do away with all of you.
You know, a while back, a number of years ago, I watched a special on TV, and it was placed in Australia, and they had this rat attack. And
I've seen that
on the farm. Have you seen that thing?
Oh, yeah.
They flooded in, and as I was reading all this stuff, I remembered that. I mean, I remember them trying to they were trying to kill them off with shovels, which I thought was apropos to this, and they also were trying to pull the horses out and set them all free, and the sheep, so they could get out of the barn and not have a chance. You can't do anything. There's so many of them just eat you alive.
Floods of rats.
Yes, and it was that was the picture that I kept holding in my head.
Yeah, that's why these rats and mice will be
swarming over
flooding into Israel.
Yeah.
Christians celebrate the Babylonian religious festival of Easter, and associated with Asherah by consuming ham. And we have just discovered that the mouse is Allah, identifying the latter as Muslims. Turns out Yahweh sees these religious foes as indistinguishable, equally detestable in their idolatry, and will obliterate faithful Christians and Muslims as if they were one and the same.
You know how we got to you, right? It was on Dr. Stan's show. And that was when you brought this up, when you brought up Yahweh, that was the last time you got on that show.
It was
amazing. Yeah. It's amazing to me that, man, the reason he couldn't, number one, he loses money and all that sort of thing, but he couldn't foresee that Christianity was that akin with, he loved you when you're doing Islam. Prophet of Doom. But when you, why couldn't he should have read this. He said, no, I'm on the same page with Yahweh. Screw this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things that I've always enjoyed about my relationship with Yahweh and doing these projects is that never once have I ever felt the urge to compromise and to not say something. I forgot even the guy's name that has the big show that on Blog Talk Radio, the #1 radio show now, I guess, in the country, charges people $30 or $60 a year to listen to him. Mm-hmm. And I did the one show with him on a Salem radio channel, which is much smaller than his blog channel, and we talked about many of these things, and then we did the 3-hour interview, which is
was it ever aired?
It didn't. I don't think he ever posted it.
What a shame.
I don't think he ever posted it. And it's people are afraid of the truth because they don't have them in the pocketbook. And that was the nice thing about this whole thing with Yahweh. I was never once encouraged to partner with somebody that would require being censored. Only popular. It's a freedom we have in Yahweh. He's not asking us to win a popularity. Here is Yahshua, clearly the best of all the prophets.
Yeah.
And I think Dode is the epitome of what it means to be part of the covenant. But Yahshua, unequivocally, he is the top dude when it comes to prophets, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Here he was doing his level best right in the middle of his prime, and Yah says, "Okay, it's got a little meeting in heaven there, Yahshua." Okay, shows up, opens the door, and not a single person. You just gotta say, okay, nothing. And if Yahshua had nothing, then we're not going to be concerned that far more people reject us or ignore us than benefit from what we reveal.
If you don't love this, I don't know what's wrong with it, but I ain't gonna do what you want.
I can't help you, and I don't really care to help you. So take it or leave it. We're going to celebrate it. If you want to embrace it and celebrate it, good for you.
Yes.
Great for you. But if you don't, that's okay too.
Yeah.
So it is a relaxing position that we find ourselves in. Mm-hmm. So we'll just begin this, and we'll pick this up again a week from today. But let me just read it the first time through, and we'll pick it up in a week.
Okay.
This is a prophetic vision that's so horrific. Yahweh must have, in my view, been pained to share these words with us 2,700 years ago. A demonic and deadly religious plague would run rampant and unchecked in his earthly home. This is Sheol on earth. The achronic people of these nations who are massing under a single religious and political leader, Leom, like widespread and innumerable, horribly destructive and deadly floodwaters, will be devastating and desolating. But he will rebuke them, issuing a warning against them while criticizing their corruption. And so they will be swiftly driven away, denied and deprived of what they had sought, and they will disappear, going away into a distant place of alienation. And they will be chased just as the chaff on the hills before the approaching presence of the Spirit. And like a rolling ball of a lust of idolatrous dung, spinning like a tumbleweed in a whirlwind before the approaching presence of the storm. Now, some of that you might say, Kirk, and we're no longer broadcasting, we're still recording. Some of that you might say, well, that's not all bad news. There's some good news there. Yahweh's prevailing, cleansing his country of these. They're being blown away as if they were tumbleweeds of dung, right?
Yes.
But listen to the last, before the approaching presence of the storm.
Yeah, what's to follow up?
This is just the first phase of what's going to become a world war.
Yes.
The most massive storm the earth has ever endured.
Yeah.
This is what's coming.
Yeah, we're still.
Yeah, this was horrific.
Yeah.
This is more horrific than we can even imagine. And all of this, he just saved Israel. Now the rest of the world's going to go. And by the way, he's not going to save the rest of the world. They're going to all engage in war, and he's not going to save any of the rest of them.
No.
So that's where we will we'll pick it up a week from today.
Yes, sir. I tell you, well, it's horrific. These things. Well, that's when
but it's uplifting in another way. Yeah, it made it really clear. His children, he's pulling out of the way, and we're really close to him returning the whole earth back to the conditions at the Garden of Eden.
Yeah. It's just such a shame it has to go through such horror. I mean, but that's what they are. If you left them alone, it would destroy everything. Period.
Yeah, but clearly it's got to happen because the 7 billion people on the earth right now are making a mess of things.
do not care.
Let's say I live now down in South Florida, and this is the drug capital of the world.
Well, that's the entry point, isn't it, from South America?
Yeah.
One of the easy entry points.
The number of people on crack and cocaine here is astonishing, and those that aren't on crack and cocaine are on prescription painkillers and mood elevators, and those that aren't on those are on the Oxycontins and those that aren't on those are alcoholics. It's a
yeah.
And I'm not sure it's a whole lot worse here than it is in California.
Oh, it's pretty much everywhere. It's pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, we're clearly the most intoxicated nation ever.
Yeah.
Drugged out of our minds.
I'm lost for words. When we go places like this, I just go, oh, wow. I mean, when I go quiet sometimes when we're talking, it just overwhelms me to think about this stuff. It's just I'm not scared about it or anything like that. It's just so sad.
Yeah, but Kirk, it's got to happen because
I'm always happy because Yahweh's taking care of me. I've got no problems. I mean, in the sense of worry, personal worry. It's just so sad. I mean.
Yeah, but there aren't going to be billions of people in eternity.
Yes.
I'm not even sure there's going to be millions.
I would be surprised.
And so the vast preponderance of the 7 billion souls alive today have to be dealt with. Because it'd be, we talked about the size of this harvest, and I was saying, that 2,000 or 3,000.
It would be 700, yeah.
And 4,000 or 5,000, and that collectively, that gleaning of Towrah is 7,000, and I had a lot of pushback and saying, no, it can't be 7,000, maybe 700.
Yeah, I heard that.
And I'm going to still be optimistic and say that it could be 7,000, but it's not 7 million or 70 million or 700 million, and it most certainly isn't 7 billion. And so there's a lot of people who do not know Yahweh, and a lot of people who are working against him on this planet, and they all have to be dealt with one way or another.
Yes, sir.
For Yahweh to reestablish Eden over the face of the earth.
Well, we'll continue. I know you continue to do your best, and I'll hang in there with you as long as I'm allowed. So it's just look forward to that.
Yeah, as I say, we have a lot more to do. I think we're halfway through this chapter, and the next chapter is already profound, and it's a bitter pill for Americans because of what it has to say. But the Mizmor that is covered in that chapter is really inspiring, and the Song of the Sea. It's just an amazing story, and it's right in the middle of the Torah, the Song of the Sea.
Yeah. And
then we're going to track down the neck again and kind of understand what appears to be our place in all of this.
Well, keep me updated if you would, just so I can read along and anticipate.
Yeah, I'm feeling guilty though of sending you in process versions because you go print them out and I go change them. All right.
That's all right. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kirk. I enjoyed being here with you, and I appreciate all of those who listen to the program and who write and who are contributing to.
It's quite a good group.
To these books, and we're really close now to getting a second volume ready to go on observations for our time because.
Don't worry about going too fast because I look at this and I actually can see how much you've done. I mean the research that's involved in here, and I even look at my little study that I do personally, and I go, my God, that's a lot of hours. So I think it's good that you did what you did today and went back and cover it again. I may not fly with everybody else. I might want to, well, give me the next thing, but let's analyze this stuff and really shamar Torah. I mean, that's...
yeah. And, and I got started communicating with somebody that was really responsible for us doing the audio programs. And so it's a person whose input I really respect. I wouldn't be doing these programs if he hadn't pushed me in that direction. And his desire is that I do more news. Because no one else is presenting the events of the day, so that they can really be understood in terms of the whole picture and what's really happening behind the scenes. You can't do all things. So it's a question of, and some people say, don't do the news, just do Torah.
Yeah. Well, you usually throw in anything that's a big topic. I mean, whether it's the obviously there's anti-Semitism.
Cardinal Pell, for example, was an extraordinary. Here's the Pope finally having a commission and a conference on priestly pedophilia, and the number 3 person in the Vatican, the person that he personally promoted to treasurer of the Vatican, is convicted of raping two young boys.
Yeah, God.
And at the same time, there's 2 other countries now that have come up that have found many cases that have been swept under the carpet on priestly pedophilia. And sometime, Kirk, I feel compelled to deal with Hitler's Pope.
Yeah. Well, I think that's...
I was unaware that the Roman Catholic Church played such a major role in the rise of Nazi Germany. And it didn't happen because the man who would be Pope and became Pope during World War II loved Hitler, although he did. I mean, he clearly had thought that Hitler was divine. I mean, Hitler was the person he spoke the highest and most passionately about. He loved Hitler. And he loved Nazism because he hated socialism, communism, and he saw one as a foe of the other. But he was hugely anti-Semitic and thought that what Hitler wanted to do with the Jews was just fine, appropriate. They deserved it in his view.
How disgusting can you be?
But what you ultimately find is that because the Pope was driven by power, and before he became Pope, he was driven by power, what he wanted to do is to remove all sense of democracy from Roman Catholicism, so that it was a wholly dictatorial regime where only one person had power, being the Pope. And so what he did is that, like, for example, when he became Pope, you could not talk on the telephone with him unless you were on your knees.
My God.
He would never have a meal with anyone. No one could present a challenge to anything he had to say. And so he was going to have governments, and he wanted Nazi Germany, Hitler, to sign it. Hitler spent more time negotiating this than he did any other treaty in his entire term as Fuhrer. He wanted Catholicism to not be political, but simply religious, and that the Pope had absolute authority, unquestioned authority in the lives of Roman Catholics. So what he did is he disbanded the Catholic Center Party in Germany, which was the one party that had the only party that had any hope of keeping Germany as a democracy. He disbanded it for Hitler to agree that the Pope had absolute sway in the lives of all Roman Catholics. And with the destruction of the Catholic political party in Germany, and with the Pope endorsing Hitler and Nazism, Roman Catholics said, well, if the Pope is endorsing it and we have no more political party of our own, we'll become Nazis. And then he gave Hitler a green light to rid Europe of Jews, participating himself. It's one of the most horrid stories you could ever imagine. And it was written by a guy who was a defender, is a Roman Catholic, defender of the Pope and the Church, and thought that he would write his book proving that Pope Pius the 13th or 12th, whichever number he was, 12th, I think, does not deserve the criticism of aiding and abetting Nazi Germany, and he ended up admitting, he says, that was my bias going in. And yet the evidence is overwhelming to the contrary.
Jeez. Well, good for him.
And so, since it's the most popular religion in the world, and since there is this direct link now between Nazi Germany and the Holocaust and the ultimate beast, Roman Catholicism, the current incarnation of Babel, I think we'll need to devote a number of shows to the evidence that was raised.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can get the book and read it.
Yeah, it's called Hitler's Pope. I'll send you the link to the article that I read that was presented in Vanity Fair.
Okay, thank you.
It's more than enough, just the article. It's a long article and it's well documented, and the article send shivers up your spine. Yeah, if you're like me, you'll read it for about 15 minutes. You'll have to just walk away, and you'll come back and read it for 15 minutes. You'll have to walk away.
Well, you know,
you're so angry that anybody could be a Roman Catholic today.
Yeah.
Send their kid to a Roman Catholic school. You just you want to puke.
Yeah, my half sister is that way. She's Father's second wife, is Catholic, and they to the core. So.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah, what can you do? You just shake your head and say, "What's wrong with you people?"
No.
Yeah, you read the story and remain a Roman Catholic, or something's seriously wrong with you. And you find out that Pell, the third-ranking Roman Catholic, in the midst of all of this, was a pedophile, raped to
where's
Catholic
the mass
boys.
exodus? From the church.
Where's the mass exodus? People aren't thinking. That's why that Yahshua 59 and 60 was so profound. You're just not thinking. You're twisted. You're perverse. All right, well, Kirk, enough of our musing. We'll join again this time next week.
Look forward to it.
I look forward to it, too. You have a wonderful week.
Yes.
Happy Shabbat.
You too. Good night. Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.